If yours is a company where you say like you will never have to work in an office again, boy, that's a right that is very difficult to walk back.
So tell me a little bit about what the future of work is looking like.
Well, gosh, it's fascinating how this is really kind of an evergreen topic, Joel. As I speak with people, I'm almost waiting for somebody to say, you know what, I'm done talking about it. Can we move on to a different topic? And yet, when I gather people together, it's always a curiosity because, again, there's so much dynamism to this. And the way that I like to frame it, Joel, is in 2019, and for basically the history of business, 95 to 98% of business was done in an office. And, if you change jobs, you change offices. You might change cities or even countries because of that change of a job. And that was just a given. It wasn't very few people would even think to ask for some liberty associated with that. It's just, I'm sorry, my kids and my spouse are coming with me, new schools, new house. That's just the way the business is done. And, 2020 came around, March of it, and all of a sudden the world changed. And if you were fortunate enough, and we need to be mindful, of course, that not everyone was, but if you were fortunate enough to be in a job that you could work virtually, obviously for your health, your families, and for your colleagues, there was no choice but to work virtually. And a couple things that I will say about that transition. Number one, I think we pat ourselves on the back at how well most companies seem to do in moving virtually. And I think part of that is, most businesses at least had folks traveling and therefore logging in from a client's office or from a hotel or from an airplane or, making sure that you are productive no matter where you are. And it was simply sort of amplifying some of the practices that executives or maybe the entire team had in place, at least from time to time, obviously with a lot more resilience and strength to it, given the quantity and regularity, frequency of this. But the other thing that we need to be mindful of is we went to virtual and by the way, from a level playing field of all in the office to a level playing field of all virtually, therefore common experience between those folks with people that we once were in offices with, by definition. And so there is a baked in trust. If you and I were colleagues dating back to 2015, Joel, and then in March of 2020, we went virtually. We know each other's what sports teams we like. We know, our spouses' names and can ask about them. We know, that you're an evening person and I'm a morning person, and therefore like when to contact each other in order to get a quick response. We know that, and frankly, there's probably a bank of trust such that if I'm having a bad day and I say something that seems a little sideways to you, you don't hold it against me because of that bank of trust that I'm asking you to draw upon through our interactions. And so things actually went surprisingly well through 2020. Obviously, all things being equal, if you were a hospitality company or a airline or a restaurant company, not so much. But if yours was an organization that wasn't overly impacted like that, a lot of companies were surprised by how well they were doing through the course of that time. But what happened then, and here's where I think the real challenge came, once, the vaccine came into place and, once more people frankly got COVID, once there was a greater comfort in being together in person, and we began to be able to do so, really for the first time, the unleveling of the playing field happened. And so 18 months into this is the first time that you see that unleveling happen. Some coming back into offices, some continuing to work at home. And frankly, a great deal of flexibility on average from employers to their employees as to where work was done. And so, and then you add an additional dynamic of more, by definition, more people joining the company in a hybrid form, perhaps some of them in places where there's not even office, several hours or even flights away from where offices once were. And so how do you build trust in those scenarios, Joel? How do the things, the kind of, examples I gave in this fictional, example of you and I being colleagues for many years, how do you accumulate the sorts of experience such that trust is there and that knowledge of each other is there? And of course, it's not impossible. And there's some organizations that have done great work in accomplishing that. But I think it has to be very intentional. There's so much that frankly is when you're in an office that you take for granted, of just sort of the, you and I have been traveling for a week and we come back and we happen to see each other in the cafeteria at the office and we catch up on our travels and what we're learning and so on. And it wasn't planned. And moreover, in so doing, we're enjoying each other's company. We're reminding ourselves of how much we like each other and so on. Now we need to create those sort of happy accidents where we can, at least, so that the folks on our teams who are rarely in each other's companies, if in fact that's our employer's decision, have a way of feeling like they're part of something that's bigger than just themselves. And then I think I'll just add one other point and let you go for a moment in my monologue here for a time. But I think it's important for us to remember that as this continues to evolve, it's going to be we will learn more about what is working and what is not working. And so what I've been advising executives who I counsel is borrowing from, though we use it in a different way, borrowing from Jeff Bezos, don't go through any one-way doors. If yours is a company where you say like you will never have to work in an office again, boy, that's a right that is very difficult to walk back. And you may find out, frankly, that a year or 2 or 3 into this experiment that things are not working so well and some change is necessary. Again, I think there are some companies that will continue as hybrids or frankly even continue as primarily virtual and succeed. I'm not here to say that everyone needs to get back 100% into offices or even necessarily half time into offices, but we need to be intentional about and even thoughtful about what has been lost in so doing, and find ways to replicate what has been lost to make sure that we are not losing our culture at the same time.
100%. Now, these happy accidents and building relationships while remote, have you seen anyone do things that are fairly unique or creative?
One company that I've been getting to know, admittedly, they were born virtual, and that's always interesting to sort of see somewhat scaled organizations that have been virtual really since the beginning. There are a few of them. And the CEO with whom I'm friendly talked about the necessity of having basically a RACI matrix, if you're familiar with those, right? Responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed, and determining for every kind of topic that we are tackling as a company, who is the R, who is the A, who is the C, who is the I. Use that to then determine who is in the meeting to talk about what, but also, frankly, to understand on the back end of that, we go off into our separate spaces, perhaps not seeing each other for hours or days or weeks, as the case may be, that we know clearly what you're doing, Joel, versus what I'm doing. And frankly, who's reporting to whom on this very topic, so that we're not losing something because of an amorphous understanding, a lack of clarity as to who's responsible for what. And then I think associated with that, a related topic certainly is the metrics associated with it as well, to make sure that there's clarity around when we're getting together, when we are delivering what we need to deliver, that we have clear lines of that also. I think, on top of that, I think especially if you are erring more towards virtual work, being very intentional about what it is that brings us together. There's a framework that I wrote about in my Forbes column a few weeks ago. It centers around 5 C's. And the idea is understand the type of work that we're doing that should dictate that we are together in person. I define that as connect, create, collaborate, career plan, and celebrate. And it's not to say that all five of those always have to be done in person. I just mean to suggest that they are, I think, best done in person. And frankly, if you've got a framework, whether something like that or something of your own creation, that helps, frankly, come up. It helps us get past some of the ambiguity. Let's say, Joel, that you love working in the office. You work in an efficiency apartment with your spouse, your dog, maybe a new baby. You can't wait to find a quiet space to do some thinking. I work in a comfortable house where I've got a dedicated office space and, everything in reach. My coffee's right here. I can go make myself a lunch out of my kitchen. I don't ever want to go into an office again, let's say, and you and I work for the same company. Well, if that's the case, then I may be kind of like pushing more and more that what we do is virtual, when in fact you're pushing more and more for us to do things in work. Let the framework determine it. If you and I can come to the conclusion, today's a create day. Today we're brainstorming and developing something new. And it's going to be really good for us to be in the same room with our rest of our colleagues on this team and around a whiteboard and brainstorming together. And so let's agree that, Thursday of this week, we're going into the office, and maybe some of us are flying in accordingly, because that's going to be the richest kind of experience given the kind of work that we need to do. Once the plan is then set after that creation, that brainstorming session, let's go off on our different ways, maybe then borrowing from my example a moment ago, each of us understanding what our responsibility is, and then we'll determine when we're going to need to get back together as a result of reaching some sort of milestone or getting to another one of the C's, as the case may be. So I think that is something we've developed as a result of seeing what's working well across a number of companies that we have the blessing of collaborating with, as working towards a productive end in determining when we should come into the office versus those experiences that may be best done virtually.